All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to our first ever live podcast on student life at Lund University. My name is Tim Parker, and I'm an international communications officer here at External Relations. And I'm joined today by two fantastic international students, and we're going to have a chat about student life at Lund and what makes it so special. So, in the studio, I have with me two students. Please introduce yourself.
Thanks for having me on, Tim. I'm Elliot, everybody. I'm a student here in my master's, but I also did my undergrad here at Lund University. I study sociology of law, and I also work with Tim and Marie in the Department of External Relations in the International Marketing and Recruitment Office. So thanks for having me on, Tim.
Happy to have you, Elliot.
Appreciate it.
I'm super happy to be here with both of you. My name is Maria Morales. I'm from Costa Rica. I'm in the Mathematics Bachelor program, and I currently work as a student worker at External Relations too.
Fantastic. So you both really are very engaged students. So maybe some of those people out there have even talked to you on Unibuddy, Marie.
I am sure. Yeah, it's such a great experience to be able to communicate because at some point we were those students having these questions, and now we're on the other side trying to help people figure it out.
Exactly. And Ali, you've also been an ambassador on our international Instagram accounts as well.
Yeah, I had a lot of fun, talking about student life on there and showing people around town and things like that. So yeah,
Nice.
yeah.
Well, for all of you listening out there today, as you probably already know, as you hopefully already know, we are open for applications for international degree studies beginning in autumn 2024. But today, we won't really be talking that much about applications. There's other webinars for that as well, and we hope you tune into those later. But we're mainly going to be talking about student life. And we did put some questions out on our Instagram account to see if anyone out there had any questions. There weren't too many responses, but one of the questions was, is student life really as good as it looks on Instagram? Elliot, what do you think?
Tim, I think that's a great question. From being an ambassador on the Instagram myself, I can tell you that what you see is what life is. I mean, that is true. The experiences differ from person to person, of course. It's not the same for every student. Some people here at the university are on exchange. They're only here for 6 months. Some people, they do the full degree program. They might do their full international bachelor's. They might do their full international master's.
Or both.
Yeah. Like me.
Yeah.
So the difference between that might mean that at different times, your life may look different in Lund. But it is really as international as the Instagram displays. And it really is as vibrant as is on there. So
Happy to hear it.
yeah.
I can also agree, because I used to be an international student myself. And we usually say here at we're proud to say that we have students from 130 different countries on campus. So it's really
amazing. It's amazing.
really international. So what do you think about that, Marie? The international atmosphere here?
Oh, it's 100%. I live in the LU accommodation services, and just having the experience of living with people from all over the world, and you get to learn so much, especially the cooking. I think it's my favorite part. I learn dishes from all around the world now, yes. And really, you get to learn so much about different perspectives, and you learn how people also have fun in their own ways. And, I understand that people wonder if it really is like it looks on Instagram. I understand that, but it is. That's the magnificent part about us. It's so authentic in so many ways. And here I have never felt alone. And I feel like that is such a big deal coming from such far country, of course. Yeah.
Nice. So it sounds like you almost found your own community here in Lund.
Yes.
Perfect. And you mentioned about your housing, that you live with other international students.
Yes.
So you tell us a little bit more about that. So do you live in your own room, or do you share a dorm? Do you have a shared cooking space? How does it work?
Yes. So when I got my admission, I immediately applied for the LU accommodation website, and I did my whole list of preferences and all of that. And at the end, I got the Eden housing area, which are corridor and studio apartments. But I live in a corridor, which I think was such a lucky chance for me. At the beginning, I was kind of afraid of, living with strangers. I have my own room with my own bathroom, but I share the kitchen and common spaces. So I was a bit afraid, I must say.
Yeah,
but
fair enough.
It was the best thing that could have ever happened to me coming here, because that's the place where I met my best friends.
Oh.
It is such a sweet experience with the corridor. I just love them so much. And again, you get to learn so much more when you live with people. Yeah.
Nice.
And a corridor room is, for those who don't know, it's kind of a living arrangement where you have your own bathroom and you have your own private, sleeping area and studying area, but you share a kitchen and a kind of a living room space with, could be 5, 10 other people, and depending on how big or which accommodation you're in. I'm also in the LU accommodation. While we're on the topic of housing,
Yes.
I'm on the LU accommodation as well. I live in a different situation. I have an apartment that I share with a roommate. So far, I've had 5 roommates from all over the world.
All right.
I've had, I'm trying to collect all the continents. So if they're, but of course it's, you try your best. But it's great because I have my own room. I have my own space where I can, study and have my desk and all that, my bed. And then I share a bathroom and I share a kitchen with one other person, which is really nice. Different situation than what Marie lives in, but you still make those long-lasting friendships as well.
Nice.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Happy to hear it.
Yeah.
And you both talked about your housing, and now I'm wondering, how do you get to class from your student accommodation? Is it a long bus ride, a train trip, a walk?
Well, there are many options here.
Okay.
Lund, yes. From Eden, for example, you can take the bike or you can take the bus, and the bus stop is right in front of the building, so you don't even have to take that long of a walk.
Too easy.
Yeah.
I would say for me, Tim, it just depends on the weather. I think, mobility in Lund is quite easy. There's a lot of different ways to get around, but bike is king. If you want to get anywhere in town, you can bike from about one side of the city to about the other side, and I would say 15 minutes if you're quick going downhill.
Yeah.
That's what I would say. And the nice part about it is that there's also buses, like Marie says. So if it's raining and blowing wind at you from the side, of course you can take the bus. It's quick, it's easy. It's, Skåne Trafiken, there's an app. You can
Good point.
purchase your
Good point.
tickets right on there. And, it's a quick thing. On a really nice day, if you have time, of course you can walk.
Exactly.
It's really nice to walk through
Perfect.
campus. Yeah.
Yeah, that's great to hear. And
Yeah.
we usually say to our students who are admitted when they're looking for housing, don't worry too much. You're always only about 15 minutes from
Yeah.
class.
Yeah. No matter where you get your housing as well. Yeah.
Exactly. And some students also choose to live in nearby Malmo or in the towns and villages surrounding Lund as well. And occasionally we get students living in Copenhagen and Helsingborg as well. So there's a bunch of options there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For you two both right in there with LEO accommodation. I like it.
Yes.
And I want to just touch quickly on something you mentioned, Maria, about the housing guarantee. So maybe there's some people watching out there thinking, I can't wait to get into Lund, but they're a little bit stressed about finding their housing. Well, I'm really glad you mentioned the housing guarantee. As long as you apply on time through the LEO accommodation website, you're guaranteed to be given housing by LEO accommodation if you are a non-EU citizen. And so for those
Big if. That's a
Yeah,
big if.
big if,
which is
yeah.
a lot of our students as
Yeah.
well. But that's because you're coming such a long way, like you two and like me some years ago as well. It's one less thing to worry about, one less thing to stress about to have that housing guarantee there. So we're really proud of that.
And I'd recommend for anyone out there thinking, should I take the housing guarantee or not? Take the guarantee.
Take it.
Because by the time you take the guarantee and you get here, you have a place to stay. And then, of course, if you want to find a secondhand contract or something a bit more informal, you want to live in a nation, for example, or other, we'll talk about that in a little bit.
Yeah.
But I think that that's really an important thing to stress
Yeah.
because housing is hard to find in Lund.
Yeah.
So it's if you have a guarantee, take it.
Nice. The honest truth from our two students there.
Yes.
But you're enjoying your housing, so
Love
that's
it.
great.
Yeah,
Yeah.
3 years. 3 years I've been there. Yeah.
Nice. And you mentioned something, Elliot, a nation.
A nation.
And that's kind of one aspect of Lund's quite famous student life. We have nations, unions have a strong voice, and student organizations as well, which there's hundreds of.
Yeah.
So shall we start with the student nations? What are they?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good question, Tim. I think for everyone out there, a nation is a very unique, kind of thing in the student life of Swedish students, not just students in Lund, but Swedish students. So nations in town. I don't remember exactly how many there are. Is it
13.
13.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay.
13 of them. I belong to one of them. And nations are basically a collection of students who they kind of live in the same place, but they also organize activities around, different events that they do. So my nation, Vahota, they're very famous for their dinners. They make amazing tapas, and they have a lot of different things going on in their pubs and their bars and all of these things. And so there's student clubs that they arrange. There's different evenings. There's these things called sittningar, which is a famous tradition at Lund. It's big formal dinners that people line up on the sides of the tables, and they dress fancy, and they have a wonderful discounted student dinner, which is important to say, right? It's cheap for students. And once you belong to Student Lund, which is a thing we'll talk about as well here, it's a membership where once you belong to that membership, you can get into all of the nations, all 13 of them. You can go to the different events, but you have to pick one. So you pick one, and it's a big thing. People say, which one should I pick?
Yeah.
And all these things. Well, pick the one that your friends go to. That's my advice, because you'll probably be going there too, and there might be benefits like discounts and coupons and different perks that you can have. It's also a great way to meet Swedish students. So the nations are quite famous for, having the Swedish student life in addition to being international. So it's a great way to interact with Swedes and to kind of get to know the Swedish the Swedish students that are in these different nations. And I think it's one of many of the feathers in the cap of Lund for
nice
student life.
Yeah.
It's one of many things. Yeah.
And one of the things that I was wondering about the most is what are the differences between the nations? We have 13. Are they all the same? In some aspects, yes, you will get benefits from all of them. But you can read about what their vision and mission are. Some of them are very into sports, so they have like sports leagues, or they're very into
music.
Yes, exactly,
Music,
or very into sustainability. So all their activities are sustainably developed. There are so many different options, and you can always find a place here.
Yeah.
That's great to hear. Yeah, it's really a really good point that you made, that they're all different in some way. It's not really our place to say today what the sort of theme or vibe of each nation really is. But as you mentioned, everyone out there listening should look on the nation's webs, their social media, to get more of a feel.
And Student Lund, they have a whole outline of all the different nations on Student Lund, so you can see what's going on there. But the differences also between nations and unions and associations, I mean, that's also quite interesting, if you want me to talk more about that as well. So the difference between a nation and a union maybe is a good way to go from there. So unions are, if you're a student at the university, you are automatically put into a union with your department and your faculty. So LTH, they have a union for their students. That means if there's anything, and so does social science, and so does natural science, and so does, all the different, faculties that we have. If you have a particular issue, let's say you're in a course and you don't like the book that you're reading, what you can do, well, just to give people kind of a hands-on example, what you can do is you can write an email to your union representative, and then they can have some sort of process that they go through to kind of figure out, can we change the curriculum? Can we adjust that for next, batch of students, or maybe even this batch of students? And I think it's really important because most universities, especially where I'm from the United States originally, the unionization of students is not something that is very common. This kind of collective bargaining that happens with the students to the university is something very unique to Lund. And it makes you feel safe as a student. And it also makes you feel like really part of a group that can make change if you feel that you want to make change. And then, of course, associations are something, different from that as well. But maybe you have an example of an association, or...
Well, we have the Math Student Association.
Oh, perfect.
Yeah, so I believe each department has these sort of internal organization of their students, which I think is very helpful because there's different layers to the student organization here. So you can also take your issues, your concerns, or just your curiosity to know about how things work to these different layers. But for example, for the student unions, I have to say that I feel very represented.
No.
Yes. I feel like I have a voice as a collective, of course, but if something ever happens, which I think it would be very rare anyways, there's a backup. To me as a student, as Elliot was mentioning, I come from a country where this is not an usual thing to have. So basically the administration just decides things and you just follow. But here, knowing that students have a voice is again, as you mentioned, you just feel safe. Yeah.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
I'm happy to hear that.
Yeah. And associations can also be things, I mean, I feel like I have to plug my association and your
Please do.
former association, Tim.
There's a lot of good associations out there, is what we want to say first.
There are.
There's basically something for everyone.
It's a really good, thing to say, because if you want to do something that's not maybe a nation, it's not get active in the union, but you want to do something else, there's something called an association. And these associations can be theater groups, they can be choirs, they can be all sorts of things. People from a certain part of the world, they get together, and I know there's the Eastern Asian, association. They get together and they cook together and things like that. But the association that I'm connected to, it's near and dear to my heart, is UPF, which is an association of foreign affairs, and we talk about what's going on in the world, and we get together, and it's nice because you get to meet people from different levels of studies, from different departments and different backgrounds, and might be bachelor students, might be master students, but you all get together and you can do things like podcasting, you can do things like writing for the webzine. I know you used to be editor for webzine.
I was.
And way back in the day. And I think it's a nice opportunity to be active in student life, even if you're coming for an exchange or even for a degree program, but not be, take up your full time and all those things, So, yeah.
And thanks, Elliot.
Of course.
Yeah. And Maria, are there any other associations that you're involved in? I'm not actually sure. I'm not sure we talked about it before.
Well, maybe it's not an association, but I'm part of the Lund Ambassadors program.
Yes, please.
Oh, yeah.
Wow, that's a nice. So we're just reeling off all these exciting things to do in Lund, from nations, unions, associations. Just before we go into the ambassador program, I just want to quickly say there's a Get Active event at the start of every semester for all of the student associations. So if you're a little overwhelmed with how many there are, don't worry. When you can, of course, look on the web before you come, but when you actually get here, you get an opportunity to talk to all the associations as well. So you can decide which one or which associations you want to join.
Of course, yeah.
But Marie, please tell us about being a student ambassador. What does that mean?
Yes. Being a student ambassador is representing both your country, your program, and Lund University all at the same time. As current students, we have a lot of practical knowledge of what it's like to be here or the experience that we have in our programs. So the student ambassadors communicate this. We are a point of contact for prospective students who are wondering if Lund is the right option for them or if the program is what they were expecting, so they can talk to a real person who's living in the moment. And it's just very rewarding for all of us to be able to help all of these students who have this dream of coming to Lund. Because I was talking to you on Monday how at some point we were those students.
We were.
Yeah. Who were like, I really dream of coming to Lund, and it's the biggest thing. And just having the opportunity to talk to someone who was in your place at some point.
Exactly.
And specifically for your program, or is coming from your country, so you get to explain, things work like this here compared to our country, or these things. It's just, I feel like it creates such a bond between students to share these life experiences. So if you are wondering if Lund is the right option for you or the program, you are welcome to contact us via the UniBuddy platform. Yes. So you can just write on Google chat current students Lund, and then it will display the platform, and you can search for the many students that we have available to talk to you.
Fantastic. And there's also some other perks of being an ambassador as well. So you get to hang out with the other ambassadors and build a sense of community, right?
Yes, build a sense of community. I think is such a big part. Again, is like the experience of living in the accommodation, meeting people from all over the world. You're feeling like you want to get involved in more things and just be active and having other things to do besides your academics, which I think Lund offers such a big opportunity for that you can just shift focus to other things that are very healthy to do and also very helpful. The perks, besides that, you get a certificate that says that you have leadership skills and communication skills, which is something to perk up that CV, of course, that as students we're always thinking about that. But really the sense of helping other people. I
Giving
think
back.
yes, giving back.
Yeah.
I think is the biggest part for me. Just this university has done so much for me already. So how can I do something for it and for the students who are coming? It's just a very rewarding experience for me.
I'm so happy to hear that. Well, I'm sure you're going to get a lot of students in this coming application round sending you messages as well.
Hopefully, yeah.
Nice. And I also wanted to just segue a little bit into Swedish culture and traditions, because you both mentioned there's people out there, they really want to move here to Lund and to Sweden.
Yeah.
Sweden's a fantastic place to live, and we already know that. It's
Yeah.
one of the
Great place.
safest countries in the world, has a very high standard of living. It's one of the best countries in the world for upper secondary education and other forms of education as well. What's it like living in Sweden?
Well, I'm originally from the United States, so living in Sweden is it's a whole different system. There's a lot of things that are similar, and there are a lot of things that are different. I can give you some examples of those. One thing that's very similar. I come from Detroit, Michigan, so it's the weather is quite similar to Sweden.
Okay.
The in terms of the cloudiness, the darkness. That's something that also impacts the way that Swedes live, I think. Some thing that I was not used to was dressing for the weather. This is a concept that in Detroit we don't do because we have cars. So we get in our car and we drive, I could wear shorts in the wintertime, no problem.
Okay.
But in here in Lund and here in Sweden, there's a common phrase. I don't know it in Swedish yet. But it's there's no such thing as bad weather, only bad clothes.
Exactly right.
And I think this is really a Scandinavian mindset, because you really have to dress in layers. Be afraid of the rain a little bit and put your rain jacket on, and have a nice wool hat and a nice scarf for the winter time, but also be prepared to keep active. I think that's something as well.
Point.
Like, I mean, even though the weather gets a little bit tough, it's super important to still get out, to still access nature. That's something that Swedes do regularly. That's something that they're unafraid to do and that they find a lot of comfort in. I think that's something very different from my background. And then one final thing before Marie takes the torch on this, which is lagom, which is a Swedish.
There we go. I'm glad you brought it up.
It's a Swedish phrase that roughly translates to not too much, not too little. And I think that if you're wondering about how do Swedes, kind of understand and maintain and live their lives, you can kind of think about it in the word of lagom, because there's a sense of moderation. There's a sense of work-life balance that occurs in Swedes. Not too much work, not too much play. Let's balance it out. So it's a country of balance. It's and there's a lot of things that have to do with, well, let's make sure that we're keeping each other accountable. This collective society is quite common here. Yeah.
Yes.
Nice. I like those interpretations. Sounds like it's going quite well for you so far.
I love it.
Getting into the way of lagom.
Of course.
Nice.
Yeah.
Because you've been here for a few years now, right?
I have, Tim. I've been here since 2020.
Okay.
So it's been a
Becoming
little
Swedish.
while. Yeah.
And Marie, you're from Costa Rica. It's not the same weather as Detroit.
No, it's not. I would say, to me, that's the biggest difference. Back home in Costa Rica, we have 12 hours of daylight every single day of the year.
Wow.
And it's very warm.
Imagine.
you don't have to dress for the weather there. You just wear very light clothes all year round. But here for each season, you have to do a transition in your mind too. It really affected me, the darkness, I have to say.
Good to be
and
honest.
everyone should prepare for that change, but you survive.
You do.
And as
you do.
you were mentioning,
and you thrive.
yes, and you thrive,
And you thrive.
because now you have this experience that I lived through this. Yes, but as you were mentioning, there are things that you find that are similar and things that you find that are different from where you come from. The weather is very different, but being close to nature is something that we have in common.
Okay, nice.
Back home, Costa Rica is a big rainforest in many ways. And I feel Sweden is a big forest, but with a cold weather. So I feel that is something that I enjoy so much, because it is somehow a part of who I am as a Costa Rican, that I'm very close to nature. So being able to just take a stroll around a forest here is so easy, or around a lake, and you really do need it. You really need to get out when it's cold or dark. And whenever we have sunlight, whenever that happens here during the winter, you should take that sunlight in for sure. I did not do this the first time, because coming from 12 hours of daylight, I never appreciated the sun. So I was like, oh, it's fine. I don't need it. But you do. It's very important. So you just learn to adapt, and it's such an interesting thing how you connect to nature in another way, because I realized, and this is kind of like philosophical or something maybe.
Okay, here we go.
But it's just this connection to this star that I've never noticed. I was always so hot back home, like, oh, it's just so hot and so sunny all the time. But here you actually feel connected to another
To the sun.
body
in
the system. It's just, it was, like it's so important. And it's so important, really. I feel like a little plant now. But I need to take that.
I never heard anyone say that, but it's a really good example.
And of course, the system. Back home, we are very interested in education and the healthcare system, and I feel Sweden stands out because of this. So there are things that are very comforting about being in Sweden. As I was mentioning, here in the university, you always feel safe, but as an international student coming from, again, so far away, I still feel safe. If something ever happens to me, health-wise or whatever, I know that I will get the attention I need. And everyone is always so kind in this country, really. I've had the best experience. I love Lund and I love Sweden, and this is a very genuine thing for me. It's been such a nice experience in every way.
I'm happy to hear that.
Yeah.
I also want to add on my behalf that Swedes are just fantastic.
Yeah.
I agree.
Yes. And I mean, of course, you come here for your studies and you want to pursue your career, but just living in Sweden and meeting Swedish people is also just a fantastic part of studying at Lund. Absolutely. And I think we might have scared people a little with the talk about the winter. But I think, as you said, there's no such thing as bad weather, only bad
Of
clothes.
course not.
Stay active. Make your group of friends when you arrive before winter starts. Then you can hang out with them all winter long.
And you know what? There's also a culture in Sweden, I think, that's interesting, that that we're mentioning with this weather as well. Is that the inside spaces, the campus that we all study at, the lighting, the furniture, the way that it's arranged becomes very cozy. There's a word in Swedish.
That's the word to describe it.
Mysigt, which is really it's a way to kind of feel. I mean, it's amazing the accommodations that we all have. They become cozier. There's this culture of fika as well, which is the afternoon. Once it starts to get dark at around 4 p.m., you think, I need a coffee. I need to keep going through my day. You get with your friends. You go have a little, a little cinnamon bun, a little cup of coffee, and suddenly life's okay again. So I mean that is, and then of course, the minute that you're thinking about winter and the the whole city turns with its lights on and everything, and the candles and everything. The minute you start to realize that it's winter, we're in the long days of spring. I mean, that's really how it feels. And then you have almost 24-hour sun.
Yep.
I mean, if you go up into the north of Sweden. So, I mean, don't be too afraid of how you're feeling in the winter. The only thing I'd say is take vitamin D. That's it. I
Yep.
sound like my mom, but it's true. Take vitamin D and you'll be fine.
Perfect. And we usually say there are 4 distinct seasons
Very
in
true.
Sweden, which
Very true.
maybe is a little bit different to Costa Rica as well. So
Yes.
we have, as Elliot mentioned, when winter comes to a close, the flowers bloom and we have spring. And then there's quite a nice tradition. There's many traditions that we have in Sweden, but there's a nice one in spring called Valborg. Can you tell us a little bit about that, Marie?
Yes.
Yeah.
Valborg is a very old tradition. I read a bit about it. It's related to the Vikings
Is it?
here.
Okay,
Yes,
okay.
yes. I read a bit about the history of it. And it's just such a big activity. But at that point, it was based on the sun is back. So during the spring, with that moment where you feel nature's coming back and they see everything bloom, and it's such a party. Actually here.
It really is.
And it's a really big party.
We're actually talking about a specific party. So this is a tradition in Lund and also up in Uppsala. On Valborg, students gather in the city park and celebrate from early morning all through the day, and in the evening light a large bonfire to celebrate spring.
And it's such an event for the whole city. It's not just for the students, which we have about 40,000 students that are here in town, but we also have all the other Lundebor, the people that live in Lund, that come with their families to the bonfire, and they partake in this as well. And that's something unique. I think college towns in America, the students are kind of segmented from the other people, and I think here in Lund I felt this connection when there was a student nation party, or if there was a sitting or a concert that was going on that's from students by students. You could see students of all ages. You can see students that were clearly in their upper 60s or 70s with their student hats on, coming and still supporting. And I think that's something that's reassuring to me, that people are not just students for 4 years or 5 years and then they're done. They're always participating in the history and the culture. Maybe not every event all year long, but enough so that they can come in once in a while and share these events like Valborg or the 1st of May. Yeah.
Yes, exactly right. And there's so many traditions here in Lund. I mean, we've been around since when?
1666.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So those traditions really keep the culture going here in Lund. Is there any others? We've talked about sittnings and also like any Swedish or Lund associated cultural traditions that you'd like to talk about more. We've kind of blended. We've talked about fika and lagom on the Swedish side, and then we've talked about sittnings and första maj here. Anything else that you would have liked to know about if you were going to come?
I've got one. I know right away.
Midsummer.
Well, Midsummer is great, but I think specific to Lund, there's the Lundekarnevalen.
Okay,
Perfect. I heard about it, but I didn't really know what it was. It happens every 4 years. It's a event. I can tell you that. It is. We have this area of campus.
It is a big event.
It's a big event.
Yeah.
It is a big event. It's all student run, which is impressive because there's a lot going on in this couple of days that the Lundekarnevalen is going. But basically the whole main center of town gets transformed into a circus, and there's a bunch of things going on. There's concerts happening with the popular Swedish and international musicians. There's different food tents that are going on. There are, different events that are happening all over. So there's a parade that happens as well. So if you happen to be here during the next Karnevalen, embrace it, have a lot of fun, go down and celebrate, and just know that it's been happening for like 150 years or something crazy like that. I mean, it's been going on every 4 years, for a long time.
Yep.
So it's those kind of things that are just fun.
Yeah.
Just
and people
quirky and
from
fun.
all over Sweden come for this carnival.
Yes.
Yes. So it's like a 3-day carnival, and
the city's packed.
Yeah, absolutely. And you can actually tell. I read once that people from all over Sweden would visit, and even like 500,000 people would be
Yes,
here
I've
during
heard
those
some-
3 days. Yeah,
Yeah,
which is a lot of people, and it's
Lot
a
of
big
folks,
deal.
yeah.
Yeah.
And that's only the tip of the iceberg, really, in terms of traditions and
Yeah.
events as well. And we
Right.
honestly could sit here and talk for hours and hours
Yeah.
We
about
can't
all
talk
those
about it all.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But
we
there
can't.
was, and just going back to the Swedish traditions now, there's one more that I want to talk about, which you mentioned, Maria, as well, and that's Swedish Midsummer. Not to be confused with the popular movie that came out recently called Midsummer, which portrays those events in a slightly different light to what
Yes.
it's actually like. So what is a Swedish Midsummer about, Marie?
Again, I feel like it's a very big deal to celebrate the sun.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's the longest day of the year, and it's in the past it was to celebrate the harvest. Like we're finally coming to have everything, and it's very fruitful. And when it comes to the activities, a lot of people go to their summer houses because, of course, it's the summer. It's a very nice time here, and people wear the flower crowns, and there are specific dishes, and people dance around the maypole, and they decorate everything with flowers. And when you get to learn about this, you really, again, realize how everything is very connected to nature, which I think is very nice and is a really big deal here too, I would say. Yeah,
I can
for
chime in
Scandinavia,
there.
yeah.
Yes, definitely try to have a midsummer experience, as you said, at a summer house with friends. There's nothing better, really,
Yeah.
when it comes to living in Sweden. But we got a little bit sidetracked there on the traditions.
We
and the
did.
culture.
We did.
Yeah.
It's easy to do that. It's easy to do that.
Because there are so many things
Yeah,
to do all
yeah.
year round. Yeah.
It's so much fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And this is true. This is
Yeah,
very true.
Of
But
course. Yeah.
the next question that I would have on my mind, if I was a prospective student,
Okay.
hearing about all these awesome things, is: do you have to know Swedish to live in Sweden? Do you have to know Swedish to be a student at Lund University?
Quick answer, no. You will be able to survive just with English. At the beginning, when I arrived, I was so afraid of the supermarket and the names of things at the supermarket. Like, I knew that was milk. I knew that was rice.
Yeah.
But just by looking at the different names, I was like, I had a little bit of a panic attack the first time I went to the supermarket, to be real. But then I went to the cashier and I was like, oh, I don't know anything, right? To be realistic, I didn't know any Swedish when I arrived.
Right. Right.
And they immediately speak to me in English. And in the public transportation services, everywhere I go, people is able to communicate with me in English, which is such a comfort too, because sometimes you wonder, what if something happens and I'm not able to explain myself? But here you will always be able to communicate in English. And all the university runs in English as well. But I must say that learning Swedish to me is very difficult, I must admit. It's very different from Spanish. The sounds are very different, but it's so worth it. I feel like you open another layer of Swedish culture and Sweden as a country when you understand what people are telling you sometimes. Just like little things, like in a store or something, and you're able to say, oh, nej tack, or something like that. just like
There
little
you go.
things, but you understand what they're saying. And I feel like, again, this opens up another part of the country and of yourself when you feel like, oh, maybe I can be part of this all the way. Yeah.
Thanks. Good to hear. Elliot, anything to add there?
Yeah, I agree with Marie. I think when you learn the Swedish language, again, like when you're in any place, you get a whole nother world that gets opened up. But I would say there's also just like you said, there's a practical part, which is, when somebody asks you for directions, to understand what they've said, and then even if I'm at the point now in my Swedish where I can understand what people say, but my responses are back in English, and and sometimes if I can get a couple words off, I'll get a couple words off in Swedish to them or things like that in a store, for example, or whatever. But I think when you're learning a language, it takes time to learn it and to really be able to understand the different accents. For me personally, Skåne, the southern region here in Sweden, the accent is really hard for me to understand.
Yeah.
Okay.
Me too.
It's closer to Danish. It sounds a bit, there's a lot of different vowel sound. So when I was learning Swedish, when I was speaking with people from Stockholm or from Göteborg or things like that, I was able to understand them way easier.
Yes.
And of course, then when I went to go visit Stockholm, I felt like I could actually understand what was going on. Because when I was learning Swedish, I was learning the Swedish from Stockholm on Duolingo or with my friends and things like that. So there's just something to keep in mind about that is that it takes a while. Don't get too hard on yourself. Don't beat yourself too much about it. And but try, because it's really fun to speak. And the other thing is it's very forgiving. I think the Swedes are
100%.
they would love to have you speak Swedish, and they will. In some cases, they will tough it out to hear what you have to say. You know?
But the short answer is you don't have to know Swedish when you want to come here for your international
Absolutely
degree
not.
studies.
Yeah.
Of course, you're studying an international degree, so
Correct.
it's in English.
Yes.
Correct.
So if you want to just stick to English, you
course.
can do that. But as these two have mentioned, learning Swedish can be very beneficial.
Yeah.
If you're planning to stay in Sweden or if you want to
True.
live here permanently,
True.
it's probably a good idea.
Yeah.
Or you want to meet a lot of Swedes. I
Exactly.
think that might also be a reason
well.
to study.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And I have this like funny story. I traveled to the US for the first time this year, and I realized that I was answering some things in Swedish.
Oh.
I was in the US and I was saying like someone like at a restaurant, I would say tack. And I was like, oh, wow, do I know some Swedish? Yeah. And I refer to the coffee break as fika. So when I'm talking to my mom, Costa Ricans love coffee too. I'm like, oh, mom, are you going to have fika now? And she's like, yes, I'm going to have fika. You start seeing how you really get involved in the culture and the language, and it sticks with you when you're here.
Yeah.
So don't be too hard on yourself if you're having a hard time with the accent or reading the words now that you're not here. But once you arrive, I feel like it's easier too.
Super.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if you want to make a start already, as Elliot mentioned, I would recommend downloading the app Duolingo. It's free. It's very easy to use. The sentences and the things you learn in the first levels of Duolingo are a little bit weird.
Not so great. Yeah.
But they're also very helpful. And when you get here, you can apply for an SFE course with the local Lund Kommun, the local council. That's a free Swedish class that is provided by the Swedish government. So that's just another great perk of living in Sweden. You can have free Swedish lessons here. So.
And also, I mean, if you really are wanting to improve your listening, listen to Swedish things, whether it be Sveriges Radio, which is the Swedish radio, or the different, there's Netflix series. I know there's one, Bonus Familjen, not to shout out any particular series, but that was one that I listened to before I came. And, you put on American or English subtitles and, you listen to it, and it really is a fun experience. And then when you get here, SVT, the Swedish public service, broadcasting service, you can listen to a bunch of free stuff on there, game shows and whatnot, news and.
That's what I do actually.
Yeah,
Nice.
yeah. But when you're here, you can't do that while you're away still. So yeah.
Yep. So if you really want to learn Swedish, there's a lot of opportunities out there. And speaking of Swedish things, which you mentioned, Elliot, one very Swedish thing and something that Lund University is very proud of is sustainability.
Very
so
true, very
Lund
true.
is actually ranked as the 12th most sustainable university in the world, which is pretty impressive considering there are about 16 or 17,000 universities in the world.
Incredible.
We're also ranked 85th, just to plug it in there, in the overall rankings. Number 12 in sustainability. So of course we have a lot of fantastic sustainability-focused programs. But when you live in Lund as a student, you're also going to get an opportunity to live in a sustainable way as well.
Right.
Right.
So that could be anything from the fantastic recycling that we have here in Lund, or the easy access with bicycles and public transport.
Yes.
Were there any other aspects of living sustainably that you guys have noticed in your day-to-day life?
Yeah.
I
For sure.
I noticed some things as well. I mean, if you want to jump in, of course.
Secondhand shops.
Okay.
Perfect. That one.
It's such a big part of the culture here. I feel like everyone goes to the secondhand shops.
Absolutely.
And there's such like good quality and such great finds too. And it's just this idea of the circular
cheap.
economy.
It's super cheap as well.
So cheap, exactly.
Yeah.
So if you're looking for something for your room or some clothing or whatever, just decoration, there's so many things. And you just feel better as well when you know that you're just in this circular economy and you're reusing things. And I think it's such a big deal here for students, the secondhand shops. That's the first thing I get asked by my new quarter mates. Where is the best secondhand shop? Yeah.
Very nice.
Everyone has their favorite as well.
Yes, as well. Yeah. But definitely the recycling. Here you get a separate bin for each waste material. And I feel like that helped me so much with my eco anxiety and how guilty I feel about plastic and the oceans and all this. So here I feel like separating all of this and knowing that the government is very eager and responsible to take care of this it's something that you can do that seems so easy, but it has such a large impact. So it's such a great thing here. I think is one of my favorite things about Sweden, actually. The recycling system. Yeah.
Nice. And I'm really glad to hear you're embracing those secondhand stores as well. And there's actually something called Fritidsbanken, which is a place where you can go in Lund that exists all over Sweden to rent gear, power tools, rollerblades, skis, anything you want. So it's that everyone is sort of thinking, as you mentioned, in that circular way rather than just consuming and wasting. Yeah.
There's actually, speaking of circular, economy and things like that, there's an organization that my friends are really involved with here in Lund called Circle Center.
Yes.
We did a pod episode on it.
That's right. Fabio and Ronya, you can listen to their podcast about it to hear more. It's a library of goods. You can exchange things and rent and things like that. And it's really a great initiative run by students here in town. Something that I noticed that's a bit more maybe on the macro scale, I think, is the amount of renewable energy that I see in Skåne. So when you're taking the train, which is already a miracle for an American, when you look around and you see that there are, windmills in the beautiful countryside, to me that's something that's reassuring, that we're harnessing the wind of the Öresund region, which sometimes can be very strong, to generate our electricity sustainably. That's wonderful. Biogas generation from our waste is also something that I'm quite interested in. That happens in Skåne quite a lot. The main thing that I noticed as I used to study architecture in high school for a year or two. I noticed how the buildings are super well insulated. The way that the heating and cooling happens in buildings is very unique. It's almost all radiant heating for those nerds out there who like energy and things like that. And for me, that was something that was really different because I know from my background in American education, schools can be some of the biggest wastes of energy sometimes in terms of, leaving lights on or heating buildings up to, really, really, high temperatures and things like that, leaky, air flowing in and out and all these things. So for me, when I came to the campus buildings in Lund, and I went to the libraries and I went to the different seminar rooms and things, seeing that simple things like the lights were on light timers and, the window shades and how the buildings were arranged made me feel like, in addition to sorting trash, that the energy consumption of the university must also be quite efficient. And I think that was something that was super interesting. My accommodation has walls that are like this thick, which from back home, that would never happen. I mean,
side point, all student accommodation is very warm.
Yeah, super warm. I mean, it's super well insulated and you just feel really cozy. And I think that helps when it's rainy and cold outside. It's really warm and cozy inside.
Yes.
But yeah, I think that was just something that I noticed, the lack of a gas stove in my accommodation was also back home we use a lot of, natural gas to do our heating and our cooking. It's all electric and ventilation, but I won't belliger the point there, but it's very sustainable. Very in the buildings to the trash to everything. It's really
And recently, I believe it happened during October. The Skånetrafiken buses for the city of Lund, they all changed to 100%
electric
green energy.
That's right.
So that's amazing.
Yeah.
You can see how sustainable
they're
development.
Silent now.
Yes.
They're silent. It's kind of scary, actually. Yeah.
But you see how sustainable development is very possible at a local level. And then you can go bigger and you get to learn so much about that. And there are so many seminars and just organizations related to sustainability, and you can get involved in these and learn more and learn how to relate sustainability to your program, because some people might say like, oh, there's not really a big connection. You wonder math and sustainability, but everything is connected to sustainability, and that's something very important here at Lund.
Fantastic. I think we ticked that box. I don't think, I mean, when you arrive here and you're living as a student, you're going to experience that firsthand as well. But it sounds like you two are already there, living that sustainable life. And we actually have some stock photos of you riding a bicycle, Elliot. And I was just adding them into some of our content about living sustainably. So that'll be going out soon as well.
People tell me about it all the time. I saw you in that photo.
And there's also an electric tram in the background.
Right.
Couldn't be more sustainable. But I think we could also talk about that all day. I also wanted to change subjects slightly to talk about the surrounding area, the area surrounding Lund. So Lund is a very cozy, very compact, beautiful, medieval university town. People often say Lund looks like something out of a fairy tale. And when you get here, you really will actually see that that's true. There's cobblestone streets and colorful houses, and it's full of vibrant students living their best student life. But there's also things to do in the surrounding area as well. So if you come from a bigger city, because Lund does only have a population of about 120,000 people, including students. Students are almost half or a third of that. If you want a little bit more of a big city experience, or you want to go into nature, there's plenty of things to do. So we have Copenhagen, the capital city of Denmark, close by, the capital of Cool, a very fantastic city to go, only 45 minutes by train. We have Malmö, Sweden's third largest city, only 10 minutes away from Lund. Helsingborg, one of the fastest growing cities in Sweden, is only 45 minutes away by train. And there's numerous cozy towns and villages and national parks and beaches all around. And I mean, we're also in Europe, so Berlin's an hour away, London's 2 hours away, Paris is 2.5 hours away. By flying a little bit longer by train, you should take the train. And what do you guys like about the surrounding area? And we can include the local, but also Europe as well.
Well, Tim, I was surprised by how dense Lund is and how close we are to the countryside. When I first came here, I'm used to suburban brawl, like, we call it suburbia and suburban sprawl, just kind of this, decentralized, long, area of kind of residential, things like that in Detroit. But in Lund, it's quite dense, and so I can take a walk and go see a field out and see people riding horses and all that kind of stuff. And so for me, that makes me feel really connected to nature. There's a lot of little nature hikes you can do around. There's beautiful parks just around Lund, but also in the region of Skåne. Lomma Beach is quite a popular destination to go to. There's different, it's a wonderful place to be. But my personal favorite, while I've been in Lund, has been, I took a day trip to kind of the other side of the Öresund to go to a modern art museum called Louisiana in Denmark.
Top tip.
Yeah, and I would highly recommend it for somebody who maybe has already been to Copenhagen, has done a day trip to Copenhagen, but wants to kind of still get another experience. So Copenhagen is also a wonderful place to go. They have wonderful food, music, kind of
just the look of it is so beautiful.
It's a beautiful city, and it's great because you can take the Öresundståg, the train that we use to commute all over. You can take it directly into the center of the city from Lund direct. You hop on the train and take it all the way in. So, for me, that was something that was unique. And then, of course, when I fly home to the United States, I fly out of the airport in Copenhagen. And when I first heard about, I'm going to Sweden, university in Sweden, and I got to fly to Copenhagen, Denmark, it didn't really make any sense to me or my family, but that's the right way to do it. You
don't fly to Stockholm.
Don't fly to Stockholm.
Don't fly to Stockholm,
It's a longer trip. It's a longer trip. So when you fly in, you can get on the train directly in the airport and take it right into Lund, directly into Lund Centralen. So, that's kind of beside the point, but it's a wonderful place to live.
Yes, absolutely.
Beautiful.
I just think it's so amazing how Lund feels so small, but then you take the train 10 minutes and you're in this city of Malmö that feels so different.
Oh yeah.
It's like a completely different vibe. It's so big, the buildings, it is
Third
right in
biggest
the
in
coastline.
Sweden. Yeah, third biggest in Sweden. Yeah.
So you get to see such a different part of Sweden, and well, I'm not from Europe, so it feels to me very European. How do you imagine it? Yeah. How do you imagine it?
Yeah.
So it's just everything is close by. But I would say my favorite destination is Van Island.
Okay.
Okay,
Yes. Good for a day trip.
Yes,
Yeah.
I went for the first time this summer, and it was a fantastic experience. You get to take the ferry, and then when you get there, there's so many things to look at. But my favorite thing there was the Tycho Brahe Museum, which was a very important astronomer of the region. So there's always a chance of looking at nature and history and the city life all at the same time. As you were saying, it's so dense that you get to experience everything. So if you like nature, you have the option. If you like the city, you have it. If you like history, there's so many museums also in Malmö. You get to enter castles, and it's just very, again, the
It's
European tourism that I was expecting. We have it right here.
Nice.
Yeah.
Fantastic. And I mean, again, we could talk for hours and hours about the things you can do outside
Oh,
of
yeah.
Lund.
Oh,
I
yeah.
mean,
Or in Lund.
yeah,
Both.
exactly.
Yeah,
There's
yeah.
just so many things to talk about and to do. But guys, that's it for today. It's already been an hour.
Wow.
I just checked the time and I was like, has it been 15 minutes or has it been an hour? Thank you both so much for sharing your experiences of student life today. I can see you're both having a great time, which is good. Was there anything else you'd like to add for people listening out there? Any final thoughts for people? That's something you might have wanted to know before you came to Lund?
If you have a question, you can always write us an email. I think that's something that I undersold myself. I thought I don't want to bug them. I can figure it out on my own. But really, we have a whole team of people that would love to answer your emails about any questions you have that we couldn't answer here today. But also, if you want to talk about student life and what it's like directly to live as a student, talk to one of our current students, like Marie talked about at the beginning of our show here. And I think that it's a really unique opportunity to connect and to ask those questions, no matter how small or no matter how seemingly silly.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Thanks.
I
thanks.
remember. Yeah, I remember I sent a few of those emails and I was so embarrassed, like, oh, I'm bothering these people. But everyone was so helpful all the time. And to this day, everyone is extremely helpful. But I would say once you come here and when you meet the team, even by email, everyone here is very kind. But what I would have liked to
have known
is be kind to yourself too. You're going to a very different place. You're going to adapt to a different academic system, a different culture. So give yourself an opportunity to adapt. And it's okay if it takes a while.
Fantastic. Great parting thoughts.
Yeah.
And thank you to everyone out there who's been watching today and everyone who watches later on YouTube as well. We really hope that this gave you a little bit of an insight into how fantastic student life is here at Lund University. So thank you guys both very much for coming in today.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tim.